Hello and welcome to a special episode on public relations in the defense sector. We are very fortunate today to have someone like Dr. Sudhir Sakhuja, who has had a very colorful stint in the infantry from 1975 to 2008. He is the alumni of the Defense Services Staff College, Wellington. He occupied the chair of excellence at the Army War College. As he taught there, he collated the best practices of countering terrorism in a book which is issued even today to student officers even 12 years after it was first published. Dr. Sakhuja served in the Military Operations Directorate at the Army Headquarters and was posted for many years along the borders with Pakistan and China. Just before hanging his uniform, he was the PRO and Army spokesperson for 5 years at the Directorate of Public Relations, Ministry of Defense, New Delhi. He served with 3 Army chiefs during this tenure. After retiring, he took over as a joint director and professor for journalism at the Manipal Institute of Communication in Karnataka, where he enjoyed teaching defense journalism. Dr. Sakhuja presently teaches corporate communication at the Army Institute of Management. He also is in charge of management development program for over 1,000 judges from Uttar Pradesh. We are glad to have him here as he is busy writing for various publications and authoring a book on Naxalism and media. He is also writing a book on defense journalism. Since September 2010, he has been conducting media charming workshops for the Army at various locations across India. He has been a guest faculty for numerous media schools, including the Indian Institute of Mass Communication in Delhi. His doctoral thesis is on utilizing the media to counter insurgencies and terrorism. He is the recipient of the President's Medal for Distinguished Service, Vishishta Seva Medal for managing crisis communication for the Army. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sudhir Sakhuja.
Thank you very much, Mr. Menon. It's a great pleasure indeed to be here this morning.
Let's start with talking about the fact that you were in charge of Army PR at the Directorate of Public Relations in the Defense Ministry. How does it actually work?
Yes, I had a very satisfying tenure there. We have the headquarters of Directorate of Public Relations of Ministry of Defense located in that magnificent building called the South Block, as very close to Rashtrapati Bhavan. It is in this building that the Ministry of Defense itself is located, as also the headquarters of both the Army and the Navy. Besides that, we have various departments of defense co-located with this Directorate of Public Relations in this building. Now, this directorate is headed by an officer from the Indian Information Service, who is of the rank equivalent to a joint secretary. He has various other officers to help him conduct the affairs of the department.
Defense PR, as we all know, is one of the largest PR networks in the country. How is it that you all are able to send out the same message at the same point of time without any kind of distortion?
Indeed, it is a very large network, if not the largest, of course. Let me tell you as to how it works in Delhi, then I will take on as to how it functions in various other offices which are located across the country. First, Delhi. As I mentioned, the headquarters is in Delhi. It has as its head the Additional Director General, Media and Communication, this gentleman who is from the Indian Information Service. He is assisted by 3 public relations officers who are also the spokesperson of the 3 armed services, that is the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. Besides that, he has officers from the Information Service who look after the Ministry of Defense as also various departments of the ministry. Now, this is as far as the spokespersons and the PROs are concerned. Besides these, we have certain other components, should I say, like the Sainik Samachar. It is published under the aegis of Directorate of Public Relations. published in several languages, perhaps the oldest journal as far as the military journal is concerned in India. Then we have a photo division there. Basically, they deal with still photography, treasure trove of photographs starting from the days of independence, etc. Then we have a broadcast section too. They produce programs for soldiers and have them broadcast through the All India Radio. We have a section which deals with news analysis, collation of news, analysis of news, etc. So, broadly speaking, these are the sections which are there in Delhi. Then we have about 25 different offices of Directorate of Public Relations spread across the country, almost in all states, with the exceptions of a few states like say Sikkim, Goa, Tripura, Odisha, etc. In these we do not have our own PROs or the Directorate's offices. But it will be interesting to note that in states like Jammu and Kashmir, we have 3 offices, one in Srinagar, one in Udhampur and the third one at Jammu. This perhaps is required keeping in view the importance and sensitivity of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So, having said that, we have this 25 offices. In each office, we have an officer from each of the services, that is either from the Army, Air Force or Navy, or an officer from the information service. They also have photo officers in some of these locations. So, it is a wide network of offices. Now, answering as to how does a message go out, common sort of a message going out. You see, at Delhi, the issues like the programs and the policies of the Ministry of Defence, they are set out from Delhi. Besides that, there could be views, there could be certain events, all these which are Delhi based, relating to the various headquarters of the services, the Ministry of Defence or the various other departments of defence, the important issues, they all emanate from Delhi and are covered from Delhi. There are certain events which happen which need to be covered. These are not foreseen, they are not planned. Generally these are fault lines which happen at Delhi, or certain fault lines which may happen even far away, say in Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir or any other place, which generally land up at Delhi. So, these are also covered from Delhi itself. In terms of the regional offices, there are various activities and events which are region based, they are covered from there. How does the common sort of a word go across? The Directorate of Public Relations utilizes the PIB, that is the Press Information Bureau website to post its stories or the press releases. It also utilizes the services of the news agencies like the PTI, Press Trust of India, UNI, Univarta and the like. This is not to suggest at all that the press releases are not also issued alongside to various media organizations. The challenge basically is to see that in crisis situation only one voice speaks, and that is the greatest challenge that they have in Delhi.
Sir, the PR department in the Defence Ministry must be having a tough job, because they must be on tentative hooks all the time because of the fact that they are dealing with such sensitive issues which have a lot of implication on national security.
That is true. Yes, of course. I must tell you that it is not just a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
It is a 365 days a job. A PRO does not sleep. I do not mean that does not sleep in that way, but what I imply is that he's got to be alert all the time. Even while he is on leave, he's got to be on his phone, answering the media, keeping in touch with the people of his own department, etc. It is a job which requires being alert, as I mentioned, and keeping the ears close to the ground. He's got to have good contacts within his own department and especially with the media persons. This is essential because even before a crisis develops, through these contacts he comes to know as to what is developing, what is brewing, and before the telecast of such quote unquote the damaging news, or it is getting into the print media the next day, he knows this is coming. So, he can apply his mind, put his act together, so that damage, if any, so to say, is minimum.
Today the general feel is that the media is very aggressive. Of course, the media says that they are doing their job. How do you look at it?
Well, things have changed. I would say they are more competitive, and this is the reason that they appear to be more aggressive. Yes, they dig out news. We are all aware as to what has happened about WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
We are aware of investigative journalism, scoops, such like things are there. But then it is a process of growth of media. We should not look at it in a negative manner. Not just the defense PR, but anybody dealing with PR needs to move on with times and see as to how our interest and that of the media can be balanced.
Another question on the media. The growth of the media has been quite wild. Today you have 24/7 news channels. They need news all the time throughout the day. How do you handle this, because they are always hungry for news?
Should I add that news is the staple diet of the media organizations?
Yeah.
You are absolutely right, absolutely right. In good old days, we had just a few dailies and the year on year growth of print media in India is phenomenal. Then we had the good old Doordarshan, which is continuing though now, and with the private channels coming in, the need for news as a staple diet has increased. Not just the electronic media or the print media, we also have the World Wide Web, the internet, and also the social media coming in. So, the canvas is much bigger than what it was earlier. More importantly, what we need to understand that the newspapers do not function on a 24-hour cycle today.
Yeah.
Most of them have their internet based sites. Yeah. So, they also keep updating by the hour. The television, they update by every half an hour. Otherwise, their subscribers, their viewers will switch off.
Sure.
The web by the minute, and we have something called citizen journalists also today. So, it is a wide sort of this thing. Hence, the need to keep feeding news stories to the media. Often, there is a requirement for a planned effort to do this. If we do not feed facts to the media, they are going to publish or telecast fiction. That will be detrimental to the interest of any organization, especially the defense forces, because anything which is incorrect coming about the defense services has a very serious impact on the national security and the minds of the people, the trust that they have on the defense services.
Yeah. By their very nature, militaries are very secretive in nature all over the world. How do you handle this?
I must tell you that till 1991, each and every story relating to the defense services had to go through the Directorate of Public Relations in Delhi or its 25 offices throughout the country. So, the PRO and the spokesperson had to see it, vet it, sign it, and only then the story went through. But after 1991, the defense services in terms of news are no more a holy cow.
Yeah.
So, yes indeed, the interests are different. As you rightly said, the militaries across the globe, they are secretive in nature.
Yeah.
For many things they want it under the wraps.
Yeah.
It is the nature of the media to regale in exposing things.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I think genetically we are different, the media and the military. The military feels that it's important to keep things so in the interest of national security. The media feels if we tell the world this story, then it sells too. Any such story sells too.
True.
It's about commerce also, after all, as far as the media is concerned. So, there is a need to bridge this gap. It is important for the military, through a very good understanding with the media, to tell them, look, this is not in the national interest that you go giving out this story. We have had certain recent things about in the media, in the print media, about certain shortages in the armed forces.
Right.
I am sorry, is in the army rather, which the army chief had written to the bosses, political bosses. That all came out.
Yeah.
It did not do much good to the national security, but it was very saleable news.
Yeah.
So, it did come out.
Yeah.
So, this thing has got to be bridged. What is essentially secretive information in the interest of the security should not be published, but then there are miles to go in such understanding.
Yeah. Isn't it important for journalists to go through specialized training to cover defense?
If you permit me, I will tell you an anecdote why it is important.
Yeah.
There was this air crash near Ambala. It was a fighter pilot, I stand corrected, fighter aircraft. It had a single pilot. The aircraft crashed, and there was this correspondent who was close to the site, speaking to his counterpart in the studio.
Yeah.
The conversation went something like this. In a piece to camera, this gentleman who was at the site, he was explaining as to what's happened, and the person in the studio asked, tell me, how many people were there in that fighter aircraft? So, this gentleman replies, look, there could be many, but the defense services are secretive. They are not telling us as to how many people were there in a fighter aircraft. So, this is at times such things also happen. Then there is a question of very basic issues like ranks. Who is senior, a major general or a lieutenant general? I will not go into the history of as to how a major general, the terminology came, I am not going to that history, but definitely a lieutenant general is senior to a major general, whereas a major is senior to a lieutenant. Very basic things. Understanding the ranks on the shoulders, understanding that a major general, a lieutenant general and a general are all addressed as general in normal conversation, or a lieutenant colonel is also referred to as a colonel in normal conversation.
True.
Understanding also that a gun in the army is not a pistol, is not a rifle, it is an artillery gun. The huge ones that you see, Kargil memories, those big guns firing off, those are guns. Understanding the equipment, understanding the doctrines, etc. They need to know that.
Yeah.
Starting from the basics, upgrading to the doctrines. So, it is a passage. Definitely, they need to know several things about the armed forces.
But is the government planning any kind of training?
Well, after the Kargil war, there was this Kargil Review Committee report. It suggested that the government does something in this particular field. In good old days, we had something called the war correspondence course. That was discontinued for certain reasons, but after this committee report came in, they have brought in something called the defense correspondence course.
Okay.
So, this started off in this revived mode from the year 2000, and the first batch came out in 2000. It has been continuing every year. So, generally what we have been having rather is a capsule at Mao.
Okay.
Mao is near Indore.
How long is it?
It is generally of a month long duration, in which they are exposed to the army, the air force and the navy, few theoretical aspects, but mainly visits to the units, making them see the equipment, etc. And then taking them to Kashmir or northeast for 1 full week.
Okay.
So, the correspondent is told this is how it functions on the ground, and they spend a night maybe in the trenches along the line of control, etc., and see as to how it really works.
It gives them a different perspective.
Definitely yes, a hands-on sort of a understanding as to what it is like.
Yeah.
But yes, there is a flip side to it too. It's been observed that it's not that all of them get back to defense reporting.
Okay.
They go back to their normal beats, but
I'm sure it helps.
definitely helps. It definitely helps.
Yeah.
It will help even more that in case these people do cover defense at least sometime in their life.
Yeah, and the silly mistakes won't be there.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
For example, I will tell you that on a particular website, they had this picture of an officer. It's a picture in color. He was wearing an Air Force dress. You are aware it's light blue.
Yeah.
And the name under that was of an army general who would never wear a blue, but he would wear a olive green OG color.
Yeah.
So, that sort of mistakes would never happen.
Absolutely. Are there any guidelines which are set down for the media to cover conflict?
About 10 years ago, when I was doing my thesis, my PhD thesis, it's that time I wanted to explore this particular question whether any guidelines are there.
Yeah.
So, I wrote to various media organizations. There is only one media organization which at that time had some rudimentary guidelines as to how to cover a terrorism related situation.
Okay.
It is to credit to that organization, but none others had any guidelines. Whereas, at that particular time there were many organizations, especially in the United Kingdom, who had well set guidelines for such coverage, defense related. For example, you will not interview a terrorist live coverage. Also the live coverage of a terrorism related situation on the ground. You will never telecast the demands of the terrorist. You will not interview them, etc. These were all well set guidelines which have been there in force in the West. After what happened on 26/11 massacre or the incident in Mumbai, these organizations, especially the television, has got together to have certain guidelines. They are now in place as self regulations, but my worry is different. My worry is that if
it just requires one channel to violate it.
Absolutely. If one violates it, everybody would follow suit and all those guidelines will go down the drain. So, self regulation, yes, but let us see, let us watch and let us wait and watch as to how they really happen on ground.
So, what would you say are the qualities required for a defense correspondent? A lot of students would want to pursue that.
Well, I will answer that, but before that I would like to say that understanding the basics of defense journalism is very important. There are a few institutes and universities, though very limited in number in India, who offer this subject at the undergraduate level or as a specialization at the master's level. So, if a student has been through these paces, he has a definite advantage. Otherwise, we have several books which give out the basics of the three services, or on a very broader sense as to how the militaries function, how the defense services function. And thanks to the internet, there is a lot of knowledge up there. So, that forms the basis of his becoming a defense correspondent. Answering your question, what are the qualities, the skills required? One, I would say definitely is a lot of patience. That is so because as we have discussed earlier, defense services are very secretive in nature. So, you need to be very patient with them and build bridges of trust with the powers that be, the people who can give you that information. You got to prove yourself that you know you will be balanced in your reporting, and once that bridge is established, then the task becomes that much easier. Then one has to be robust both mentally and physically, because one needs to travel quite a bit to areas which may not have very comfortable stay, etc. Inhospitable terrain like the Siachen or the jungles of the northeast. So, these are the things that he has got to be very strong mentally too. Over a period of time, if these small things are set aside, they start enjoying the job, so much so that they see the country and many a times accompany the powers that be to various other countries and see the world too. It is a very challenging and satisfying way of building one's career.
Thank you, Dr. Sakhuja. I am sure you have excited a lot of students about defense journalism, but we have more questions for you, but only in the next episode.
Thank you very much indeed. The pleasure is entirely mine.
That is all we have for you today. We have more questions for Dr. Sakhuja, but only in the next episode. Stay with us. Thank you and goodbye.